the week, and I look forward to seeing the results at the end of the week. So my name is Sarah Day, and I'm from an organisation called Practice Solutions, and our organisation has been around since 1999, and what we're really interested in is how we can support organisations and people who access care and support services throughout Wales to support one another to improve the way in which services are delivered and received. I'm really privileged in that I get the opportunity to get involved in lots of different projects, and the projects that I enjoy working on the most are those pieces of work that kind of include organisations, but also those people who have experiences of using services within those organisations. And I wanted to talk to you today about a particular piece of work that I'm heavily involved in, and have been for a number of years, but most importantly in 2015 is when it started to take more prevalence in the work that I do, where I worked with an organisation called Cartrefi Cymru Cooperative alongside a fellow colleague of mine to look at how we could utilise everyday technology, like video technology, like the technology we're using today, to explore different ways in which people accessing care and support services could have more of a say about the services that they received, but also to make the process more efficient as well. And what that means in practical terms was we worked with a group of people and showed them how to use the video cameras that they can access on iPad technology on their phones. And we spoke to them about how, imagine if instead of having somebody writing down, documenting your life for you, you could make a video about your life that gets stored somewhere in a safe place. So instead of continually having to explain to people the ways in which they can work with you to bring out the best for you, make a video. We'll support you to make a video, and we'll support the people around you. So when we leave the project, there will be knowledge that your support staff can use to help you create videos. And then those videos can become part of the information that is kept about you. I have spoken to lots of people in the past who use care and support services, and the most frustrating thing I think for people who may receive care and support is continually having to repeat your story. Well, imagine if you have a video which you can just play to people so they get a better understanding of what it is that is important to you, without you having to spend time where you could be enjoying doing things that you want to do in your life, explaining it to somebody about how best to support you. And also, I think in terms of the new legislation now, where it's imperative that we put people at the heart of their care and support, therefore people should be given that opportunity, not only with their voices to say, but also within the paperwork that is written about people. People need to be able to contribute to that. But I think that we can learn far more, all of us, from looking at how we can create videos. And I know that videos have had a significant impact on the people that certainly I've worked with, in supporting them to think about how they can move on in their life. So as an example of that, there was a guy who I worked with along with his support staff to create a video about how he wanted to demonstrate that he was more than capable of being able to shop on his own. So he created a video that showed him shopping independently, and then being able to travel to and from the supermarket on his own with limited support. That's what he wanted to be able to do. And then his medication changed. His doctor changed his medication, and all of a sudden he was not able to do the same things that he could do before. like go and shop independently, and he thought that it was something to do with his medication. Now, because he's not able to verbalise what that means to a medic, he worked with his support staff around him to be able to take the video to show the medic what he was like before he took the medication and how his life had deteriorated after taking this medication. And it was only when the doctor was able to look at the video and see that actually this guy was fully capable before the medication change of doing living well, that he had the information that he needed to be able to think about maybe changing his medication. So it was a really powerful tool in terms of being able to self-advocate. I think also videos are really important not when you're living in a supported living environment, but maybe when you're in receipt of home care. So I know, and having spoken to people before around, if they experience domiciliary care, people come into their house every day, whether they're a carer or they're experiencing being supported themselves. When new members of staff come into their house, they're continually having to explain the best ways to be able to support an individual. So actually, by creating videos that become a tool that can help people understand us better, we spend less time on process and more time on being able to live well. So for me, it's about how we can make the see me approach embedded as part of everyday common practice within the delivery of social care services for everyone who may require that support whenever they need it. And for me, the vision is that we start to utilise this information more effectively for the future, which makes a difference in terms of how organisations are able to deliver services, but also for how people who, day in, day out, have to work with others to live a good life, can do that in the best way possible. And we can do that. Everybody, every one of you, I'm sure, has access to making videos on your phone. But it's about how, using the see me approach, you can create the right type of content that ensures that your voice is heard in the best way possible. I'm not sure whether I think I've probably said all that I want to say. I mean, ultimately, it's a really simple process, very simple, and it would be ideal if everybody could work in this way, but I know it doesn't happen.
Okay, Sarah, thank you very much for that. We're going to have 2 more presentations now, and then there will be a sort of panel discussion, and I know the jurors are very keen to ask questions, so please hang around for that as well, please, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we're going to go to the next presentation by Jenny from Credu in Mid Wales. If you just, we've got 10 minutes, Jenny. If I start waving furiously, it means your time's up. Is that okay?
That's great. Thanks, David. So, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me along. You've got an amazing week ahead of you by the look of it, and I'm pretty daunted to be on the agenda. But yeah, as David said, I'm from Credu, and we support young carers and adult carers as individuals and groups. We raise awareness and we support carers to have a strong voice and influence on the things that matter to them. We love the Social Services and Wellbeing Act because it legitimises everything we believe in. It's nice to be legitimate for a change. But the carers given equal regard, focuses on people's outcomes and strengths and not administrative convenience, co-producing with families and communities. It's just like everything we believe in. So we, like many others, are on an incredible journey of working to make people's actual lived experiences of care and support to reflect the aspirations of the Act. This is because so many of us have seen and experienced how, when really listened to, when treated with respect as an equal, as someone who has a value, with something, whatever it is, to give. We've seen how much that helps us grow and gives us hope. However, when we are treated as a passive unit of a large system with nothing unique or special about it, that kind of approach is not only ideal, it actually does harm and diminishes us. So we have much learning to share. We're very much on a journey. We're in a dilemma about what to focus on. But we are going to focus on, for today, the co-producing respite story in Paris. So once upon a time, we started holding listening events with carers from all over Paris, and many issues have emerged. But the hot topics have been access to respite, meaningful respite, in other words, breaks and opportunities to have a life outside of caring and support with care. And the other one is awareness raising. So importantly, at these events, cabinet members and key leaders in Paris have listened to the successes of their system, as well as some really tough stories about where people felt their experiences weren't good. What is important is that they listened to carers without defensiveness, and we were astonished by just how important this act was for carers. So even so, action really matters. So together with carers, these lead officers within the regional partnership board in Paris created a co-producing respite project, and amazingly, the TED and their documents were reflected verbatim carers' voices. So what's really important here is that they listened with respect and they shared power and resources. So this is progress in action. So Credu were commissioned to deliver on this co-producing respite project, which is a small pilot, but we believe it's really important and has the potential to become the new normal. So in thinking about how we approach the project, we want to build on what works and address some of the challenges. So what did work well? To some carers, such as Jean, who cared for a mother with dementia for many, many years, she praised the planned, pre-booked respite that she could access. Once a month, her mother could go to a care home where she was given excellent experience with amazing care workers who Jean believed should be valued more, and through amazing disability transport. Others were saying, I want a break, but I don't want a break as separate from my child. I want help on a holiday so that we can have a break as a family. Just because my child has complex health needs, I don't want holidays away from her. And somebody else was saying, I feel guilty when I go away and leave my teenage son with personal care needs with a care worker. He asked me, why do you need respite from me but not my sister? Respite from me would mean him having a good time for something he loves doing, so I could be guilt-free. Somebody else was saying, I have 2 children with disabilities and they go on respite breaks at different times. So I've not actually had a meaningful respite break for years. So she also had to stop doing a job that she loved doing. And she said, this is costing the system, but it has little value for me. So other carers were saying that to make life manageable, you've got to find little ways of getting respite in informal ways, as well as the formal, getting formal support. And over the years, they've developed creative ways of doing this. And they were exchanging tips between, and continue to exchange tips between each other. So if we look at the purpose of respite, to have a break, that's part of it. But it's more about whatever it takes to keep balance in life for both carers and people who are cared for. The Welsh Government policy talk about this explicitly, but in practice, it's different for every family. So the purpose of respite is not respite itself, but it's an incredibly important means to sustaining well-being. So what good looks like for each person is really different. For example, a parent carer, and this is where the project is coming into play, of an adult son with autism was experiencing significant distress as her son's anxiety levels were spiraling. His main strength and passion is creating music using computer technology, and his computer was no longer working. So, and my colleagues listened to the carer and listened for the strengths of the family and what would really make a difference. We were able to fund a second-hand computer with the right music software that he needed. The son has regained access to his life's passion, and his mother and now with endless hours of respite, and he even got his music played on BBC recently. So another mother whose son has significant health problems, so severe that she has to help him not end his own life regularly. She finds that she goes on a bike ride every morning before she wakes up so that she can cope with what the day will bring. At the beginning of lockdown of all time, her bike broke down beyond repair and she just collapsed with despair because she couldn't afford a new one. And her morning cycles are her coping mechanism, her respite. She discussed this with my colleague who then funded a new bike, and you wouldn't believe the relief and the feedback. She said it not only helped her, but it helped her son because she can have the strength to care for him. It's difficult for a big system to accommodate everyone's differences. It must be so daunting for the heads of large services to develop respite that suits all. However, I think some of the leaders and services are suited all, but I think that some of the leaders in Paris and other counties are realising that the closer power and resources are to the people, the more they will make sure that every penny has value for the people it's meant for. People generally, amazingly, don't take advantage. People want others to benefit from resources as well as themselves. Carers want other carers to be okay, other families to be okay too. So, and the more the power and resources are with the people, the more we learn and immediately about what works and what doesn't and adapt accordingly. So it's surprising how even the most innocuous of processes can get in the way of doing what matters. So our respite budget has been matched by other funders that cover Ceredigion and North Wales. Ceredigion has been innovative in this regard as well, and North Wales. We've now got more of a single wellbeing budget, including the other resources, that focuses on what matters and not silos. And this is what we are learning so far. We can't give enough time and space to listening to understand what is fundamentally important to each family. The videos would be brilliant. They value every individual, notice and acknowledge strengths, and what gives people a sense of purpose. And respectfully support people to identify solutions. And when we do this, we unleash people's creativity and, as far as possible, their desire and ability to take action for themselves. When we focus on not on what we can afford, but on what's possible with people, we create solutions of high value and often not at a high cost. So, and keeping processes very simple is a challenge, but it's the only way that we can do what matters when it matters. But this is important because for amazing carers like Mandy Hughes, mother of 3, including one daughter who has highly complex needs that require 24/7 care, she says, I dare to dream these days. Before, I was existing just to get through the day. I feel my life has purpose now. It's given me a reason to live. So that's it from me. Thanks for listening. I hope that was useful for you and made some sense. It's over to you now. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you very much. Finishing on time there as well. Great. So we're now going to bring the third panel member into our discussion, who will also talk for 10 minutes, and then we have time for questions up to about midday. So plenty of time to catch those questions, write them down so you can remember to ask them. So good morning, and I'm now going to introduce you to Ossie Stuart, who is an equality and diversity consultant. Over to you, Ossie. You've got 10 minutes. I'll wave when you've got a minute left.
Thank you, Rush, indeed. I hope you can all hear me correctly well, because I'm not sure how all this Google Meets is not my default way of doing this. Okay, it works. Okay, good to hear from everyone of you. Quick background of myself, but you've been also given some my biography, I think. So I'm a diversity consultant. I was an academic. Also, I'm a trustee of the Social Care Institute of Excellence, which is SKY. We call it SKY. I'll try and speak slowly, but this topic is very close to my heart, so I'll probably speed up a bit. My apologies for that. Okay, my role is to talk about my vision for health and social care in the future. It's a big task because it's sort of high level and low level too. Sarah and Jenny mentioned two things which caught my eye. One was about people's voice, and the other was about also the idea that things should be of value. People are of value. Those two things, I think, are core to what a future health and social care system should look like. But before I do that, let me just talk about what we have at the moment. Social care was actually designed in the 40s and 50s. It is to address 20th century problems. We're 21st century. The world has changed, but social care actually hasn't. It still is led and run by professionals who don't use the system. I remember I was struck recently by a meeting I had recently where I was talking about the future of care homes and people with dementia living in them, etc. And I suggest, do we actually need these places, which are fundamentally warehouses? And this person said, oh yes, we need them because we will need them to go into the future because that's the only options we have. And that person, I suspect, would not choose to be in one of those places too. But that was the default response they had. So there's that fundamental thing about social care actually isn't designed for the people who actually use it. It's designed by people who don't. It's a problem-focused system. It's there to solve problems. We heard about Jenny talking about people, real people. But there's always a tendency, you look at them as those young people and their families as problems to be solved, rather than citizens to be assisted. It's a means-tested system. So not everybody's got access to it. There is a hierarchy. And also, you need to be grateful if you get it. Workforce have its biggest role. People who work, I've got personal assistants, PAs, direct payments, carers, food handlers, but they play this ambiguous role, partly as a carer to support you, but also an enforcement role, to oversee you, to safeguard you. It's a weird role. And finally, safeguarding is the primary role of local authorities. When you talk about local authority, their primary concern is safeguarding. So it's about keeping people safe, not looking at them as full citizens of our society. I haven't been mentioned in health inequalities and the issues around that, which I'll mention a bit later on. COVID-19 also, the impact of that really emphasised the problems that already existed in social and social care. They weren't new. Because of the legacy system, it responded very poorly to the crisis. When people needed it most and needed greater flexibility to respond to COVID-19, it was inflexible. I've been talking to lots of people across the United Kingdom, Wales as well, where people had different experiences from local authorities, how they responded to this. For example, if you have a direct payment, some people were told, oh, spend it as you need for the crisis. Well, we understand that. Other people, no, you cannot do this. Postcode lottery. There's a lack of trust. Families. About Jenny speaking about her shock that she was actually trusted, their voice was listened to. There's a fundamental lack of trust between local authorities and their people. People know best. They know their families best. They know their situation best. But local authorities tend not to trust them. And during COVID-19, this came in when people said, this is the crisis I've got. Here's the help I need. Some local authorities put it well, others didn't. I mentioned postcode lottery already. And also health inequalities. The fact that where you lived, what background you came from, whether your language, and this includes Wales as well, and English is English or not, first language is English or not, had a big determinant about your experience of get access to good services too. But that's the negative bit, and that's the first half. Got 5 more minutes. There's a better future. And as Jenny mentioned the word value, we found that values-based providers, value-based organizations, value-based people who looked at people as people responded best in COVID-19. There's also volunteering, and that's community support, which came forward, which tells us something about our society, that we think about people, how we value people. That actually, this local Sainsbury's is part of social care. Social care isn't just about delivery of services. It's your community. And the community has a responsibility to be part of this. The best local authorities responded with best supportive communication, and then Sarah talked about communication. Communication is key. Listening to people, responding to their needs, being available is very important. And also technology, which enabled the rise of peer support. I'm in sunny Camden, not sure about that, and I'm talking to you guys wherever you are in your part of the country. Technology is going to be very important going forward, but used with permission, not with oversight, not control. So there has to be a real debate about how we think about technology going forward. And also I mentioned that society, our whole communities are part of social care. If we go to shops, gym, cinema, they should have a responsibility to make sure as a citizen I can participate, as well as just the formal things we know. And also, but there are still some things we need to look forward to the future. One of the biggest stumbling blocks to a good care and social care system is lack of choice. It's all very well having choice control. If it's a choice control between a care home and living at home with your family, that's no choice at all. There should be lots of flexibility about how we choose options we have. So it should be served for everyone. I mentioned earlier that it's designed for people who have no stake in it. Actually, they do. When they get older, they can't guarantee their bodies will stay the same. We should all see social care as a cradle-to-grave system for everyone. And it should be funded with that in mind. It should be no longer problem-focused. It should be a care system which is value-based, thinks about people as citizens. How can we contribute? What are our responsibilities, rights and responsibilities? Everyone has something to offer. The person they would say over the most high support needs is still a loved one. They are still contributing in some way. That should be valued. The system should be built on trust, not the understanding that the people who know best are the people who need the system, who know their own lives. A workforce who are respected allies, not carers, paid better, seen as enablers, not as carers. So workforce, the whole thing about workforce status and the role they play. Role of local authorities should act as providers of sports information, be flexible with use of resources, eliminate and help for processes. Social care is responsible for the whole community. No one should be excluded. And the final, as I said before, the purpose technology should follow identified need, not a substitute for support. We're all in this together. Social care has an opportunity to be reinvented. It's an opportunity we should grasp now. Thank you.
Well done, Oz.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ozzy, Jenny and Sarah. It's been fantastic. Stay with us now, because I think we're going to have a really interesting and fascinating debate. So I want to ask the jurors now to raise their hand and see who's got a question. Cyril, come on. Here we go, Cyril.
Okay, right then. Why are we not putting into practice? This is for Sarah and Jenny. Why are we not putting into practice those brilliant projects that they were speaking about? Okay, you know, great. Because don't forget, everybody's got an idea, not just the people who run social services. Furthermore, Ozzy talked about direct payments. There's not many people know about direct payments. I had an instance last week when somebody said that, oh, I told this boy to put in for direct payments and he's for his mother, and he said, how do you know about that? The social worker said, you're not supposed to know about that.
Okay.
Right.
So the question, Cyril, that you've asked there is, why can't we have more projects like Sarah's and Jenny's in practice? And to Ozzy, direct payments, why aren't people using more of them? Thank you, Cyril. Over to the panel.
Right.
Who do you want to go first?
Go on then, Sarah.
Okay, well, I think, Cyril, what Ossie said in terms of our system at the moment is outdated. Yeah. So at the moment, certainly in terms of CME, when I engage with commissioners and talk about CME, all of a sudden it becomes about why we shouldn't do it. So there's a risk around whose data is it? You know, where do we store the data? And that becomes the issue, rather than, wow, that could make us, free us up with time in terms of people having to write everything down. If we could just use different tools, then it would be really creative. But unfortunately, it's almost like those people cannot see the other side of, so the commissioners don't understand what it is. And actually, when we get in and we work with commissioners, as Jenny has talked about, and they can actually see it for themselves, do they get excited about the work? So in terms of where I can talk about CME, we're now working in very small pilot projects with CME, but their systems are outdated, so it doesn't make it very easy. In an ideal world, what I would like is for us to develop an app for CME, which gives people the opportunity to be able to buy it, well, engage in it if they so wish, because not everybody does want to do that. But I think the problem is, Cyril, is we've got outdated systems.
Thank you, Sarah. Jenny.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant question, Cyril, because when I sometimes share my stories with other people that are not in the social care world, they often say, "Well, that's the way it should be, isn't it?" And it's like, "Oh no, it's not always." But the people that we meet in social services and health, they're really good people that want to make a difference as well. But the system are huge and they are not human scale. So my very personal opinion is that we need to devolve power and resources to local communities, and people will do magic with those power and community. And I think we need to not be afraid to do that. I think, but we will need to learn to do that, and that's going to be messy to begin with. But we just need to keep learning and getting better at it, and that's a real democracy, isn't it? When people are involved in their in creating and developing their own systems and ways of looking after each other.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jenny. Around direct payments.
Okay, so I'm going to be quite cynical about this. 2 reasons. Basically, they fear the whole process, and it's seen as a complex, and also the idea of giving people money is like, oh, no, we can't do that because there'll be the corruption, fraud, etc., etc., etc. And the second one is the social workers themselves belly and sun system themselves, and see it as counter to what their managers will allow them to do. So it's too complicated. It's the way it's been set up. Most local authorities, they create these very, very complex systems of needs assessments, etc., and how to then assess how it's done. That people just think, I'm not going to deal with this at all. So, and it is a very simple system if it's people allowed to use it in the way they need to. But local authorities actually counter the Care Act misunderstand how it should be applied and advertised, and they don't tell people about it. And you're quite right. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Right. Thank you. So I think Joshua wants to ask a question. I think Sarah wants to ask a question as well. No, hang on, Sarah. Hang on, Sarah. And I've also seen Giles and Claire ask a question as well. So I'm going to go Joshua, Giles, then Claire, and Sarah. If you've got a question, you can stick it in your answer. So Joshua. I'm not sure your mic's on.
Can't hear you, Josh.
You've got volume control on your mic, Joshua. Can't hear you, Joshua.
Right. It's just taken a long.
Switch your camera off, Joshua. Maybe it'll help your Wi-Fi.
For you. Obviously with a video. Hello?
I can't.
Yeah.
Hello?
It's to Sarah.
Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Hello?
Just your funny governor question is about. Josh, Joseph is going to call, get the question from you, and make sure that we ask that question to the panel before 12 o'clock. Is that okay? I'm going to ask Giles has got a question here, and we'll ask that. So Giles says, Ossie, it's very enlightening to hear what you've said about the legacy system, and he feels it's not enough to fiddle with it, but we need a revolutionary approach, similar to actions by disabled people to get direct payments introduced. So what do we do in Welsh Government and as citizens to make this revolution happen?
I think it's two good questions. That's a very good question. I think revolution is a good word, because fundamentally, if you're dealing with overhauling a system like that, I would use the word co-production first. And the reason why I use that word is because it signals a shift in power, because this cannot take place without a shift in power. It's very important to bear in mind that there are, when we talk about people, we're talking about a very diverse background group of people. Disabled people, wheelchair users, people who are part of the disability movement don't consist of all the voices we need to be listening to. So we're talking about a revolution that includes everyone. And we're talking about co-production, where we talk about everyone's needs and everyone's requirements. But Welsh Government has to understand that if they want to have a credible system, they need to start listening and devolving the design of it to the people who understand what it is. But accept that also that system won't be a unified system. It won't be one size fits all anymore. It'll be a system which fits everyone the way that suits them. And as I said before, the Welsh Government's not the only target. It's our society in general. There needs to be a wider debate about what we want as a people, in Wales particularly, in terms of social care, because we're talking about real citizenship and involvement of people. We know that COVID-19 brought out a great support from communities about making sure that the most vulnerable, and I use that word in its widest sense, were looked after. So there has to be a wider debate about what is it we want as a society as well. There need to be two things going on then. A direct challenge to the government, local to government, about how social care is organised and run. It involves the workforce. The debate must involve the workforce and also people in professionals as well. But there must be a wider debate, a challenge, a revolution about how we think about people in our society.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ossie. Jenny or Sarah, would you like to come in on this? So Giles's question is around how do we make revolution happen to the actions to get direct payments introduced? Sarah.
Okay. I'll quickly say I think it's a really good question, and it's all about knowledge and communicating knowledge. I think we've picked up here that a lot of people don't know about how the system works. So it's about how we can make and create information that gives people access to information in a way that they understand. And it's also about creating a culture within the social care workforce, which goes back to what Jenny says around that we support the workforce to do their best and to take risk. So it's about positive risk management. I think there's a fear that people think that, you know, it's about all of us having equal accountability for what we choose to, how we choose to support people and how people choose to support themselves. And this needs to be about a positive revolution, which you know, enables people to make decisions based on information that they easily understand. and do the best with.
Thank you, Sarah. Jenny.
It's a really good question, Giles. We need to be accountable, don't we? We all need to be accountable, and citizen voices need to be stronger than ever, and it needs to be easier to listen to citizens than not to. So I saying the same thing again, but I think that if we devolve the power and resources to local communities and in the simplest ways we can, and there are loads of models of doing that, and to put decision-making power as close to the people as possible, the revolution can happen. We're not sharing power really when we do an assessment on somebody. We're assessing them, and then we send off our assessment to a panel who then determines whether it's deserving or not. That's not a relationship, and that's not shared power, and that's not enabling the community to take action alongside people. So we need to evolve. We need to evolve. We need to evolve, because as communities we need to learn to do this better, and as services we need to learn to do this better too.
Great. Thank you very much. Coming in now, and I'm going to be really ambitious and try and get through them all before midday. Okay, so I think Claire wanted to ask a question. If you've got a quick question there, Claire. Your microphone's off. Yeah, great. You might need to switch your camera off. Just to help your wife. There we go. Go on then, Claire. Okay. Claire. Right, while Claire is sorting out technicalities, Joe Parson wants to ask Jenny, how long do you have time to run? You're typing it or you're saying it?
Yeah, hi Jenny. Hi Jenny, I just want to know how long your project's been running and whether you were limited by funding, whether it runs out anytime soon.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. Yeah, the money runs out in March 2020, and we are dearly hoping for an extension for another year. But I really want us to use that other year to work with carers and the local authority to work out how this can be a new normal. This isn't just a one-off project. This is how we do life and society. I agree with what Ossie was saying earlier, that the change is a bit more fundamental than even what the project I'm talking about, because people shouldn't really have to ask for small amounts of money to make their lives work well. They should have that money anyway. But I'm all too conscious of that. And but anyway, but we got the world as it is now, and we are evolving to change. So I'm hoping that we can do that in the next year. Fingers crossed.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm going to go to Taffy. I've got a question for you, for the panel.
Hello. Thank you to all the speakers. It's been really inspiring listening to you all. My question is for all of you. Different things have come in. Just one thing came to mind, like the accessible health information legislation, and not many medical providers, GPs, hospitals have kind of stepped up to the mark on using that. I just want to know, you know, with Sarah, your videos, that would make such a difference because it gets so exhausting talking about your needs and how you want to be supported. But how do you get people then to look at those videos? Because they never look at your, you know, forms and information that is filled in before, you know, you're either there in front of them in a hospital or they've come to see you. How do you get them to actually engage with that information?
So I guess that's a really good question, and that is why I mentioned the fact that we need some investment in through technology. My vision for the future is that we have a system whereby we all, each and every one of us on our medical records have a portal where we can upload short videos that we think that would be really important for those people around us who support us to live well, to be able to look at that information before we go to a GP appointment or to a doctor. You know, we might end up in A&E. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we ended up in A&E, that there was a system whereby the medical professional's job as part of their process would just be to have a look at our key videos to help them understand who we are, what's important to us, and how best they can support us. So what we need is investment from you know, Welsh Government to shape that kind of piece of tech. And I'm having conversations now with organisations like Improvement Cymru, just because it's like, oh God, I feel like I'm a one lone voice in all of this. I need to be able to speak to the people in Welsh Government who go, oh yeah, I understand what you mean. I understand what you're talking about. Let's put our money where our mouth is and transform the sector for the benefit of everybody for the future.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to ask one of the three questions from Josh, and then I'm going to go to Claire, and also Andy has got a question. So I'm going to start with Josh. Josh's third question, just to move the discussion on a bit so the three can answer. What role can Welsh Government play in supporting persons with disabilities in sharing their experience of care services, whether that's positive or negative? Andy.
Listening to carers and their families, and Josh, you probably know better than me, but it's finding lots of different ways of listening to people's experiences. So when we've asked about this, people keep saying, you know, like, sometimes getting my case written up and shared is what works for me. Sometimes I want to talk to power, and that works for me. Other times a video is perfect, especially if it prevents me from repeating my story so often. So in a sense, even for the previous question, we need to create time and space for dialogue and listening to understand each other. And unless we do that, we are just perpetuating a system that will have less value. If we can listen, create systems that listen to understand and do what matter in a big assembly level, right down to community level, then we'll make a difference.
Deall, Jenny, thank you. Ossie.
Basically, I would suggest that anything time Welsh Government came forward with a policy or policy proposal, they need to evidence how they could produce it. What's the process, how they looked at that, who they spoke to, who they're going to speak to, how they're going to continue to co-produce it in terms of its delivery too. So basically, they have accountability about how they've engaged with individuals and groups to do so. I would say individuals and groups because thinking about a revolution, we need to think about organisations that represent disabled people and also individuals who will live experience and their families and carers who care for people as well. But I took for that accountability.
Thank you, Ossie. Sarah, very quickly.
think it's having more opportunities to use events such as this with the right people on your screen. You know, all too often people are just focusing on what they have to do in terms of there's not enough talking and there's too much writing things down, I think, and there's not enough opportunity to be creative about the ways in which we engage and then take action from the discussion.
Thank you, Sarah. Brilliant. So, Claire, we've got time for your question, and then I think that's it. No, can't hear you. Sorry, Claire. No. Can you type it in quickly, Claire? Type it in. So we're learning here all the time. If Claire's got time to type in a question, that'll be fantastic. But no pressure, and we're not worried about spelling either. Sorry, Claire, we can't hear you. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm gutted for Claire. Final words from the three of you then. Let's try and imagine what Claire's question would have been. You've got any last words from, starting with Ossie?
Great to meet you all today. I've always been frustrated with the way that social care is today. It could always be better. We're people. I've always wanted to be treated as a person and be felt that I've got a stake in and a say in the system that actually influences my life. Social care is crucial to me, but at the same time, it shouldn't be a problem to me either. It should be an enabler.
Yeah. Thank you, Ossie. Thank you. Sarah.
I think that COVID-19 has given an opportunity for those who work in social care to come into the forefront of everybody's minds, and it's going back to what Jenny Amrywiaeth said. Ossie said about the fact that we have to make sure that social care becomes webbed in and part of our community, so people know where to go to for support and advice before they need it, and that's about celebrating the great things that happen every day within the sector for individuals in receipt of care and support, but those also who work within the sector too.
Thank you, Sarah. Jenny.
It sounds cheesy, but I think I'm learning to value everybody. So obviously value people in.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I have pressed the camera. So switch the camera off or thing off.
You seem to be stuck in the matrix now. Can everybody else turn their
voice off? I don't know where to type it. Can everybody else turn their voice off?
Right, Jenny, sorry, you were saying we're going to sort out the technical issues with Claire for this afternoon later on, but if you had anything else you wanted to add there?
So devolve, learn as citizens and as services to learn to devolve power and resources locally, but in the process to value everybody, to value citizens and people needing services, but also value people who work. And I just noticed that when people are valued and listened to, whether they are workers or managers or whether they are citizens, we really listen and respect each other. We just, the magic unleashes. But I think systems can be quite austere places, and services can be austere places for those people who are part of the system. And just kindness will make us do better. That's so cheesy, but
fantastic. No, it's lovely. Thank you very much. thank you, the three of you, for taking the time out today for contributing. I hope you, well, I can certainly see you stirred up enough conversation and reaction amongst the jurors this morning, and we were able to get a few questions in. We will, you will hear the feedback from this process in due course, but I know that you've made an impression on the jurors right from the word go. So thank you very much for your time. And definitely, I'm going to say to the jurors, we're going to now take a break now. The lunch is served, wherever that may be. And I would ask the jurors if they could come back at 10 to 2, and we just talk through what we've